So I've been inspired by anime like Dragon Ball more than I thought I was, and I want to talk about why while sketching one of my favorite stills for this week's practice drawing. Hey beautiful blooms. I was dealing with several big emotions when I chose to sketch this particular scene. It was the weekend that MatPat released his final game theory video. It was the weekend I finally landed an interview with a decent company. And it was, of course, the weekend we learned that Akira Toriyama left us. So there was a storm of joy, mourning, guilt, yeah, guilt, and uncertainty all rolled up into this one big mess that I wasn't entirely sure what to do with. So when it popped into my head to draw a scene from Master Roshi's house, I was hesitant at first. I had never done tribute art like I'm seeing pop up all over Twitter before, which the majority of it has been absolutely beautiful to see, by the way. It's one of the few times I've actually liked scrolling through Twitter, but that's beside the point. What I'm trying to say is, because of inexperience and being raised in an environment that cultivated an awful habit of second-guessing my own intentions for even the most innocent things, I really waffled on this idea. Like, I kept thinking, is it really okay for me to join in on the tributes to Toriyama? Is it really okay for me to make a video about it? And so on and so forth. But a friend of mine mentioned that Toriyama would want people to draw, and it honors his legacy to do so. And since these art vlogs have apparently become an unexpected form of therapy for me, I'm taking this opportunity as another step towards kicking those bad mental habits to the curb. And I feel like Master Roshi would agree too. Which is funny to me because just thinking about Master Roshi's house calmed me in a nostalgic way I hadn't felt in years, and I couldn't put my finger on why. So I binged some Dragon Ball to find out. And I discovered that the show really had more of an impact on me than I originally gave it credit for, which is impressive considering I already attributed so much to the series. Because like most kids of my generation, Dragon Ball Z was an after-school staple, right? And I remember rushing to take care of chores so I could curl up in bed and watch the episodes that came on after Sailor Moon, which I also adored. Toonami in general shaped a lot of my interests, but that's a video for another time. Anyway, Dragon Ball Z got me through a lot of hard afternoons. I was always really slow with my schoolwork growing up, and as embarrassing as it is to admit, I used to cry some nights when I couldn't figure out what I needed to do. But having Dragon Ball Z on in the background and watching the characters push through their struggles really motivated me to stay on track and gave me some needed breaks in between getting my assignments done. Now, I didn't get into Dragon Ball until I was older and my brother introduced me to it. But to be honest, I think I actually liked it more than Dragon Ball Z in a lot of ways. Yet what really hit me rewatching the show was just how influential Master Roshi, and more specifically Kame House, was to me. Because Kame House is actually my dream house. This simple little house with minimal furniture is bright, colorful, and the most calming and welcoming location in the entirety of the Dragon Ball universe. It became the cast's home away from home, their safe space. Like, think about it, right? Every time there's a crisis or a character has a problem in their own home, they go to Master Roshi's house. And whenever the group wants to meet up to have a good time, they usually go to Master Roshi's house. And while he'll complain about it every once in a while, Master Roshi never turns anyone away. He gets them food and a drink and lets everyone figure themselves out. Which is kind of ironic since the very first time we see his house, it's getting ransacked by Emperor Pilaf, like in episode 3, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So we see this invasion of this peaceful space, and yet how Master Roshi handles that moment really speaks to his character and the vibe that he builds for his space. He knows he can just straighten everything they messed up and make his home right again. And that's what I've always wanted for my own home. A warm and inviting space where even if things get turned upside down, I know they can be put right again without much fuss or blaming anybody for it. Because it's kind of the opposite of what I had growing up. The tiniest mistakes became these massive, overblown problems, and eventually my house, well, I said it, my house felt like a house, not a home. But I never attributed part of my fascination with interior decorating and design to Dragon Ball until I re-examined why I wanted to draw this scene from Master Roshi's home. I even said in my first art vlog for this channel, my main inspirations were games like Animal Crossing and The Sims. So rediscovering, or rather finally realizing after all these years, the impact Kame House had on me growing up was a bright spot that anchored me while dealing with all those big emotions I talked about. It wasn't even just Kame House either. The importance Toriyama placed on the characters having actual homes to go back to really stood out to me during this rewatch. Like, think about it. How easy would it have been for him to just make Bulma and Goku camp? All of us would have accepted that as part of their adventure. But no, instead he created these mesmerizing dino caps that could poof anything from a motorcycle to a house into existence. Not only does that speak to Bulma's character when she insists on using them, but it also speaks to a fantasy I think a lot of people have that doesn't really get discussed a whole lot. And that fantasy is the ability to go wherever you want, but still plop down a home, have a home that goes with you, or even just the general basic empathy that comes with this idea, because it's used in the series to show that everyone deserves a home. For example, in Dragon Ball Super Broly, Goku gives Broly and his friends a capsule house so that they can actually have a decent life where they live instead of being stuck in a cave for the rest of their lives. And in Dragon Ball, Master Roshi takes Kame House because it's actually a capsule house, and it goes with him to his training island when he takes over Goku and Krillin's training so that they all have a safe, comfortable place to stay when they're done. But probably the biggest example I can think of is how much they actually cost. Now, finding sources for this next bit was a little rough, so I'm having to depend on the Dragon Ball wiki and the manga for this one, but supposedly capsule houses are typically priced at around 500,000 zeni, and zeni is the Dragon Ball equivalent to yen. With today's conversion rates, that means a studio-sized capsule house, complete with electricity and running water, costs a one-time payment of $3,386 US. I wish! Oh my god, I wish so much this was a thing. Even if you were to adopt tiny house life, you're looking at closer to double that price at the minimum of what you would have to invest. And like, yeah, that would still be a steep upfront cost for most people, but that's still a much more approachable figure than the hundreds of thousands we deal with today. And Japan is no better, especially when you consider Japan's rather intense inheritance taxes if you're lucky enough to inherit a house. So I feel like there was a genuine humanitarian wish behind Toriyama coming up with the capsule house system. Anyway, we're veering off track. My point is, this small detail that's usually overlooked in favor of things like combat analysis and favorite quotes is filled with so much love and really contributed to the overall hopeful vibe both Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z possess. And it's really not that surprising when you actually mull it over, because like, how many kids were inspired by Usagi's room in Sailor Moon and are realizing that aesthetic now as adults? How many artists were inspired by Tomoyo's costumes she made for Sakura in Cardcaptor Sakura? How many people actually started sewing because of Tomoyo? I think we easily forget that she made all of those. And despite so much art of Sakura in those cute outfits that exist over the years, we rarely see the same affection shown towards Tomoyo. All of this is a reminder that our favorite media is littered with little details like this that have a big impact on our tastes and goals as people. But unfortunately, because at least in the West, we hyper-focus on things like plot devices and shipping culture, these tend to fade into the background, and we sometimes lose those connections to those little pieces, or never realized they were there in the first place, like I had done with Master Roshi's house and its connection to what I aspire my own future home to be one day. So while I'm heartbroken that we lost Akira Toriyama, I'm glad that all those artists out there were willing to take the time to tell their own stories and share why his work was so important to them growing up. Because if they had stayed silent, if they had listened to snide comments from people saying they are only doing it for clout, then I don't think I would have re-examined Dragon Ball the way I did and discover this particular influence that Toriyama had on me. This is why it's important to celebrate the people we care about and the work that they've done, because you never know who you'll help by doing so. So thank you to all those artists, and more importantly, thank you, Akira Toriyama, for all the ways you inspired me and people around the world. In the end, I'm really glad I decided to sketch this piece. It made me feel better and connected me with a part of my childhood I didn't know I was missing. Now, you might notice from the date on the paper, this should be week 4 and not week 3 of my weekly drawing challenge, but don't worry, I didn't skip week 3, I just shuffled when I do a video about it because it just felt right. I did not skip leg day. But what about you? What small details from your favorite shows played a big role in forming who you are today? It's okay if you don't know the answer yet, or if you do know but you don't feel comfortable sharing. But if you do, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. You never know if what you share will help someone scrolling by, as some of you have so kindly reminded me from in my own comment section from watching my videos. And if you'd like to keep following me on my journey to learn how to draw, then please also consider subscribing. I have to say it because it's just how YouTube works. Thanks everyone so much for watching, and until next time, see you then!